Welcome to the Real Chili Podcast.
And the Golden Eagles of Marquette University in Milwaukee are bound for the Final Four for only the third time ever.
5 seconds left. Marquette down by one, trying to avoid the upset. Blue the drive, the left hand. It's good. 1 second to play. Vander Blue has put Marquette in front by one.
And I want to win every day as basketball players, as students, and I want to win every day, most importantly, as people.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Real Chili Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lavender. I'm joined by Pete Mohan and Eric Pond. And holy shit, fellas, after months, I don't know how many months it's been, but I know the last pod we posted was on the Housers on April 16th. It's been a long, relatively quiet summer for Marquette basketball, but not for us, right?
It's been 84 years.
It feels like that. But it's been a busy summer. I think Eric, I haven't had the chance to see you. Actually, Eric, now that I'm thinking about it, we had plans earlier this summer to go fly fishing, and we never made that happen. You took a trip to Pennsylvania at some point.
We did not make that happen. Yeah, no. Went to Penn State, the beautiful ridge and valleys of central Pennsylvania, to do some fly fishing. For those of you who've never dabbled in the sport, it's wonderful. It's a great time to get out with your thoughts, your rod, and just really break down some Marquette basketball in your head so when you're with the bros on the next podcast, you're ready to spit some fire at the beginning of the season.
There you go. Love the prep work out there with your rod in the Pennsylvania hills.
It all sounds very euphemistic for something that's just simulating a bug.
A bug.
You're
right.
standing in a river pretending to be a bug.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, it's definitely just a way to make fishing 10 times harder, if not 100 times harder on yourself.
Absolutely.
It's just, I mean, it's unbelievable. I think one of the famous quotes is something like, fishing is to fly fishing as walking is to ballet, which just shows you how fucking uppity some fly fishermen can be. So,
I was going to say that's a humble brag if I ever heard one right there. That's
it's definitely, yeah. It's a rich white man sport, to say the least.
So Peter J. Mohan, we saw each other a couple of times over the summer. One of our dear podcast members, Peter Worth, got married just a few weeks ago, right? And we were there. Mm-hmm. Had a wonderful time. It was great to see you and some of the other fellows. But what's your summer been like? What have you been up to?
Man, I've been all over the place for work and stuff, and weddings. I'm sure, as a lot of our listeners have to deal with between the months of August and November, traveling around to celebrate the love of our friends, and that's beautiful. But yeah, just been doing that, and I actually got engaged myself last week.
Hey! Yep. That's right. Knocking them out here. We only got one left on the Real Chili Pod.
Uh-oh. All the lady listeners out there, we're dwindling.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm getting married to the game.
Oh. Nice. That's right. We had a brief moment over the summer where we thought this pod was never going to happen again, but Pete Mohan got engaged to the game, and now we're back on the pod train. Yeah.
Loving basketball all over again.
So with that, we are so happy to be back on the Real Chili Podcast with you. One of the reasons we started this pod was so that we could have an excuse to talk to each other about Marquette basketball more. And frankly, we don't talk to each other as much over the summer. So we're glad to be back and chomping at the bit for basketball season in what should be a really promising year for Marquette basketball. So, fellas, I mentioned it at the top. When we last left this conversation, I was just looking back through the podcast feed. The last time we posted was the day after the Hauser news broke. And, that was a 47-minute podcast during which we, I think, pretty expertly broke down the Hauser issue, at least with all the information that we had at the time. It feels like that that's years ago now. Like, that is so far in the rear view mirror for me. And I think part of that is at least because there's so much promise in the roster we have this year. Am I crazy for saying that, or does it feel like the Hauser news is so far away to you too?
Well, I think obviously it's the biggest news that's going to continue to be in people's heads until the games start, just because that was the last real big event after the loss in the tournament. But I think that we should take the same mindset as the coaching staff and the players, and I guarantee you they're not spending any time thinking about what could have been with the Hausers on the team. They're just going about their business and preparing for the season. So, I mean, you could play hypotheticals all day. We would have made – if a Hauser was on the team, they would have made that winning shot, the potential hypotheticals that could come down the line during the season. But frankly, I don't want to hear that. This is a great roster that's going to be exciting to watch no matter what. And frankly, I'm one of those people who's over it.
Well, your famous quote from our last pod was, "If they ain't with us, they against us," and I think that resonated with a lot of Marquette fans. Eric, I got a question for you. How many games into the season will it be before we hear, you got to wonder if the Hausers were here, if they could have pulled this one out? How many games into the season until we hear that?
3 or 4, I guarantee it. Purdue, November 13th, Wisconsin, November 17th, not saying those should be losses. They'll be very tough games. Purdue is 23 in AP, 22 in coaches. Wisconsin, always tough, receiving votes, and we play at Wisconsin.
Right.
And it's going to be incredibly annoying. I mean, Mohan, you took the words right out of my mouth. It's just more than anything going to be frustrating to keep hearing this through the early part of the season until we can hopefully perform in a way and build enough excitement around our young talent, sort of in the general, NCAA basketball community where people aren't thinking about the Hausers anymore, and that's not part of our storyline for the season. Mm-hmm. Naive to think it's never going to fully go away, but I think as a fan base we've done a pretty good job seemingly adopting the mindset of hopefully what the basketball team itself has adopted, which is the only people who exist to us are the ones within the walls of the locker room, and let's just move on.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing too that we should avoid as a fan base moving forward in the year, or at the end of this coming season even, is the X+1 theory of, we made it to the Sweet 16. Well, it would have been Elite 8 if it was. Right. Well, we made it to the Final Four. Oh, we could have won. We could have won it all if we had the Hausers here. So I think that there's no literally scientific way that we could simulate what this team would do with the Hausers on it. And so anytime you're comparing the reality to that possibility, it's flawed in itself because we would never know what that iteration of this team would look like. So you're comparing it against something that can't even be quantified. So don't freaking try, dude.
Don't try. and if you really want to put your head there and take your head there, the last time the Hausers were on this team, we lost 7 of 6, 6 of 7 straight down the stretch, and lost any chance at a Big East championship and got blown out in our NCAA tournament game. So that line of thinking isn't going to get you very far, at least on this podcast. So for all the talk about the Hausers, and we didn't necessarily want to start the pod with that, but that's kind of where we left off. Other major offseason news, some of you obviously have seen this, but Marquette took an international trip. They played a few games internationally, and I think that is one of those things in Europe, one of those things that when you're really going to try to make a move with the team heading into a season, you've got some new pieces. You've obviously got some returning pieces on this Marquette roster. That overseas trip is a really great thing to have on the calendar. And I think a quote that we've heard from Wojo, which we just talked about a little bit before on this pod, at least which resonates with me, is that the games they played in, they don't really get anything from the games in terms of scouting or facing off against stiff competition. But what they can get is that team bonding, as corny as that may sound. And then what they also get is that extra practice time. So you're looking at a team right now that to me really feels like with this offseason international trip and where things are pointing, it feels like we're pointing in a really good direction.
I also want to add one thing to the context of the offseason and Wojo is that the style of play should be expected to be different this year. And Wojo has said as much, basically saying that we plan to play with 2 bigs in the lineup, which tends to stray from the, flavor of the week, which is 1 in, 4 out kind of offense. And just because of our roster composition, we have a lot of talented bigs who are not necessarily of the stretch big variety. They're more around the rim type bigs. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see how that type of roster makeup impacts what we look like on the court.
So we're going to get into a little bit of going through the roster here. We're going to run through the player that we're most interested, the returning player that we want to see the most out of, and the newcomer who we're most excited to see. But Pete Mohan, I got a question for you, both of you really. I think we all, when we're talking about ball handling this year, and we're talking about, this is kind of a bigger picture roster question, my guess is we're going to start the year seeing Marcus have a lion's share of point guard minutes in the earlier part of the year. I'm curious if you see that shifting over the course of the year, and if you see it predominantly shifting to someone like Kobe, or if you think Kobe starts the season handling the ball. How do you think the ball handling situation is going to work out from what you've read, from what you've seen over the past few months?
Yeah, Mike, I'll jump in here. I think where I'm sort of landing at this part of the early season is that the duties will shift, or at least we'll see a significant split, then hopefully edging towards Kobe McEwen taking over more of those responsibilities. Kobe McEwen, which I think we're all familiar with, is a Utah State transfer, sat out 2018-19, and all indications we're hearing from the program about Kobe McEwen are incredibly positive. Not only does he look good, apparently to those in the know, he has been dominant in practice and oftentimes looks like the best player on the floor, period. If he can be a running mate alongside Markus Howard, relieve some of the playmaking responsibilities, but also that ball handling pressure from Marcus, which we saw Marcus, not get in tough spots last year at certain times, particularly with ball handling. We could be looking at such a much more balanced team in 19 and 20. And that's something I'm just particularly interested in and excited about, is the Kobe McEwen factor, especially when it comes to not only playmaking, but ball handling.
And you always got to take those off-season reads from people in the know or from the Twitterati with a grain of salt. But if you're looking at Kobe McEwen, 6'4", 205 pounds, Pete Mohan, that is exactly what you want in a point guard, and someone who can get to the rim and also distribute, and something that Marquette hasn't had in quite a while.
Well, I think he helps too, just because of his size in the backcourt. If we want someone out there with Marcus in the backcourt, we want it to be someone who can at least a little bit make up for his defensive deficiencies. Mm-hmm. So I think that's going to help a lot. One thing that's been pointed out on Twitter about Kobe is that his shot profile may be a little less efficient than some of the other guards on the team. So I think that'll be interesting to watch. But certainly what he really brings to the table that we didn't have is someone who's a strong ball handler who can get to the rim and get to the free throw line, which is something that we've struggled with over the past few years. So to have someone that has the ability to draw 7, 8, 9 free throws a game, I think really brings a lot of balance to our backcourt. But in general, it's like night and day between last year and this year with the backcourt talent that we have. Yeah. Seriously, like last year, it's just basically Marcus, Sakar, Chartuni. Right. If you want to maybe consider Bailey or Sam somewhat shooting guards too, but they're not really guards. And so, and now you get to this year, and you have obviously Marcus and Kobe McEwen, but then you got Greg Elliott coming back off injury. You've got freshman Dexter Akano, who I guess has impressed people in practices with his size and defensive ability also. And of course, Samir Torrance, who looks like he's a guy who's really bought into the idea of doing point guardy things. Like, this is a guy that I've seen some clips of him playing, in the scrimmage and whatnot, and just adds some small dynamics. Like, I saw him make a beautiful entry pass to the post. And those are the things that we need to improve. Like, how many turnovers do we have that were entry passes to the post or lazy passes on the perimeter? Yep. And I think a lot of those unforced errors will be corrected this year by just having more guards that have the ability to ball handle and take a little bit better care of the rock.
So get this. So Samir Torrance, I wanted to hit on this as well. I'm excited about, I think he enters this conversation as well as, for a number of other reasons, Greg Elliott, who I view his return as an influx of talent that is going to be hopefully immeasurable. But Samir Torrance, traditional freshman coming in, consensus top 50 recruit, and set his school's record for charges taken in a season. Talk about a dynamic that would be interesting to infuse into this team right now.
That ain't bad.
So for as much improved as our ball handling should hopefully be, last year, aside from Marcus, I guess if you can put it that way, the heart, at least from my perspective, of that team was Ed Morrow and Theo John. I think without those two guys and the attitude they brought and the talent they brought to the court and the leadership, I think last year's team is a very, very different team. And I think with those two guys getting a year older in the system, with the addition of Jace Johnson, who maybe won't be as much of a write-off or a non-contributor as maybe some of us had originally expected. We'll have to see. But I think we have to see how the cards fall. But there's a direction this whole team could go in which if the stars align, there is so much talent on this roster. And if they can gel and find what this team's strengths are, I'm excited for this season, guys. I mean, just looking over the rosters, hearing what we've heard from the international trip, from scrimmages, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but this is a really talented Marquette roster overall.
I want to point out too, for the listeners and for discussion's sake, throw this out there. Think about, some of the years at Duke, like when Wojo was at Duke, some of those good teams that they had, their big men were guys like Plumlees and stuff like that who, like they weren't, some of these guys that Duke has now, like, the Bagleys and athletic guys like that, they're just kind of like just some big dudes in there who were fundamental as hell.
Right.
They went to work. They had toughness. They rebounded, blocked a couple shots. And I really like the way that our front court has trended in that kind of direction in terms of Wojo setting up his roster the way he likes it. And it really is probably the most fundamental and well-rounded front court that we've had at Marquette in a long time. And just from the fact that we're talking about the fact that Wojo plans on running a 2-big offense is testament to the depth that we have. His hand is being forced because we have to give more minutes to these big men. Otherwise, he wouldn't be running that type of offense and he wouldn't be committing to that. So I think that that's just evidence that these guys are the leaders of the team. And like you mentioned, the heart and soul. And I think that that's being rewarded with minutes for these guys because they can be pace setters for this squad.
So I want to take a look back at the first couple years of Wojo's tenure here as well. And the knock, and whether that be because of roster construction, which I think a lot of people would argue, or coaching, which another faction of individuals would argue, was defense. It was always defense. That's where we came down and we struggled. Last year, Marquette held opposing teams' field goal percentage to 405. We had 4.3 block shots a game and allowed 69.5 points a game, which were all top 2 in the conference. And that was with 6'9" Theo John and 6'7" Ed Morrow, really holding down the paint. And granted, they're tough as hell. We removed from this equation 2 neutral to minus defensive players in the Hauser brothers, I would argue, and add to it Jace Johnson, a true 7-foot center who was 27th in the country in offensive rebound rate last year, which is going to be huge for second chance opportunities, but also an incredible shot blocker during his time at Utah, which hopefully will only serve us to take us to the next level and hopefully, really potentially vault us or at least sustain the incredible defensive performances we had.
Heaven forbid we get an NCAA tournament win this year. That'd be really terrible to squeeze out of this group for Markus Howard's last year. We want to talk a little bit more about the roster. So, fellas, I'm going to throw it to each of you, and then I'm going to weigh in as well. But we want to go around and do who is the returning player that you are most excited, most looking forward to, expecting the most from, and then let's do a round of that, and then we'll get into some of the new players. So, Mohan, I'll throw it to you. Who is the returning player on the roster that you are most looking forward to seeing play, expecting the most from, expecting the biggest improvement from? Who's that returning player you're looking at this year?
I think it has to be Brendan Bailey, if you ask me, because I think that he has the biggest jump to make. He'll probably be, absorbing a lot of those minutes that the Hausers left out there. And he's got the frame, he's got the pedigree, and as we saw last year, he really does have a good shooting stroke. I think that, with his length and the ability to get the shots off, that we're going to have to rely on him for 12 to 15 points a game and being that reliable outside threat. I don't think that he's going to be maybe as good of a shooter as the Hausers are. I mean, they're, elite shooting talent, obviously. Mm-hmm. But I think Brendan Bailey has all the tools to be that 38% three-point shooter that would be extremely valuable for the squad. So I'm looking for big things from him, and he has the length to contribute on defense too. So sky's the limit for that kid.
For sure. Eric, you can pick you can pick anyone you want, including Bailey, depending on what you're thinking.
Sure. Yeah. No, all good points from Mohan on Bailey. I'm going to have to go with Greg Elliott, though. Incredibly excited to see him come back after redshirting his sophomore season. After, I think it was a thumb injury, kept him out all last year, and I believe plagued him his freshman year as well. I think he's someone who can really be a difference maker on both sides of the ball for this team, given the opportunity. He was the 2017-18 Marquette Most Improved Player Award. So clearly, in the eyes of the coaching staff, he had done the right things and had just been hampered by an injury. His freshman year, he shot 50.5% from the floor and 79.2% from the cherry stripe, and was actually third on the team in blocks with 24 and fourth in steals with 30. I think this kid can be a major contributor on this team if finally healthy, and I'm incredibly excited to see it because he certainly fills a need at the guard spot.
I'm going to have to do a repeat of Pete Mohan's and say Brendan Bailey. I think looking up and down the roster, if you say names like Markus Howard, Sakara Nim, Theo John, on down the list of returning players, those are guys who maybe we haven't seen their full ceiling, but we've seen pretty damn close. And expecting major leaps out of those guys, it just doesn't feel like within the realm of possibility. So I agree, Mohan, with you that Bailey is the guy who, in his sophomore year, what is that leap he can take? What is that leap we're going to see? I think it can be on the defensive side. I think it can be on the offensive side. He's got the tools. He's got the physical frame. I am excited to see that guy play because I think that's where, if we're getting contributions and a step up from him, that's where you see this team, hit another level and hit another plane with guys really at all five spots who can legitimately score at any point, who can be defensive stoppers, with the exception of Markus. That's a scary, scary team to go up against when you're looking at all five guys. And so I think Brendan Bailey is one of the pieces, or perhaps the biggest piece in my mind, to making that happen.
And between Sakar, Brendan Bailey, and Jamal at the wing, that's three really versatile guys, two-way players that we have at the wing. And I think that splitting, the minutes between two positions between those three guys, really, I think we're going to see some quality minutes out of that.
For sure.
I am absolutely confident in a healthy Greg Elliott being on this team and staying healthy for the year. But if I did have to pick someone else to sort of hone in on, it would be Sakar Adam, and just the hot streak he ended the year on last year. Yeah. I think that does go into the Brendan Bailey conversation as well about sort of filling a need on the team and stepping up into that role. But Sakar finished an incredible hot streak last year, and I'm so excited to see that hopefully continue into the year this year.
And he's our workhorse. I mean, he was playing crazy minutes down the stretch.
Yep, absolutely.
And okay, so transitioning to new players who we're excited to see. Eric, I'm going to throw this one to you first. Who is the new player on the roster who you're new to Marquette, I guess I should say, that you're most looking forward to or expecting the most from?
I think, for all reasons discussed earlier in the pod, it's Kobe McEwen. I think it has to be. The excitement building around him in the program is immense. And I think, adding that 6'4", 205-pound guard who can do things like Mohan talked about earlier, do some of the small things, hopefully at the ball handling role, and then also really just fill some of that gap after Marcus and playmaking on the floor. It's going to be really exciting to see, and something I don't think we've had in terms of balance on a team in quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with Kobe being that person because, and I guess this is my hot take of the day. God forbid something happened to Marcus this season and we had to close out the year with Kobe as our starting point guard. I would feel confident that we could still get a tournament win with him at the helm. I think that he's perfect for this roster because he has that versatility. They can play on ball, off ball, which is important for playing alongside Marcus. But to know that we have someone who is a veteran ball handling guard on this roster, in the worst case scenario, he's an incredible insurance policy for this backcourt. And I'm also excited to see Samir because, like I mentioned before, he has the makings to be a pretty good point guard. And it's been a while since we really had that guy who enjoys distributing the rock first and foremost and making his other teammates better above all. And I don't know how many minutes he'll get this year. Hopefully he's not forced into too much action, but I think that we should be really excited to watch Samir Torrance down the line with this program.
For sure. And so I'm going to zig where the two of you have zagged. I'm going to say Jace Johnson just to mix it up a little bit here, because I think not from the standpoint where I'm expecting Jace to come in and unseat Ed or Theo, but I think what we've heard in Wojo's comments, one of you mentioned this earlier in the pod, we may look at situationally, at least this year, having two bigs out on the floor. And what's going to make that possible is having Jace step in as a third big, a third legitimate big, is someone who can, help spread the fouls out between Ed and Theo, who can open up the minutes more, and who can allow us from a foul perspective to put two bigs on the floor. I don't think it's going to change completely the dynamics of the team or really, send us into the stratosphere. But I think that is a piece when you're looking at all the pieces that need to come together for a successful team. Having a third big who, we all love Matt Helt, but having a third big who competes at a higher level than Matt Helt or just has more physical tools than him. I think Jace Johnson, I'm watching his development. It seems like we've heard some early good things about him, but as you guys know, this is the time of the year when you hear great things about everyone. So I'm not.
One of the other little things too that I
Chartouni.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I'll eat shit on Chartouni for sure. No, but one of the little things that I've heard about Jace Johnson too is that he's a good screen setter. And when you have someone like Markus Howard who has as quick of a trigger as he has, and some of these other shooters on the roster, and just in general playing any kind of pick and roll game on the perimeter, it's really great to have someone that wide and large, just because all it might take is that extra split second for Marcus to get his shot off. And, there's even times where you guys have seen it across basketball where a guard just kind of uses a big man as a blocker and shoots from behind him, and Marcus has the ability to launch from anywhere. So just having a human pylon the size of Johnson on this roster to give that extra gap of time, I think is going to be key for his shooting and some of these other guys.
I'm trying to think if someone described my greatest basketball skill as screen setting, if I would take that as a compliment or not. But, hey, everybody's got to fill their role. Everybody's got their role. the teeth.
I'm sure Wojo would tell you that that's the highest compliment you could give someone.
Right, that and taking a charge right up there with Samir Torrance. All right, so moving on from roster changes, just a couple more segments here. We wanted to give you a few thoughts about the Big East and then move into kind of big picture season expectations. But just to kick us off here, maybe there's not a ton to say, but for preseason Big East expectations, Markus Howard was voted a unanimous Big East preseason all Big East first team. He was the only Marquette player kind of within the first two teams or honorable mention. Marquette was voted fourth by Big East coaches in the preseason poll. So it goes Seton Hall, Villanova, Xavier, and then Marquette is tied at fourth with Providence. I guess that's not crazy when you're looking at replacing two productive pieces like the Hausers and you haven't spent a lot of time with Marquette's roster. You can't see what's coming. I feel it feels a little low to me, frankly. How do you guys feel about where Marquette is at least initially projected by the coaches versus how Ken Pom has projected us, which is second in the Big East, second only to Villanova?
Yeah, Mike, there's certainly a big disparity here between how Big East coaches have ranked us and what Ken Pom sees. I was going to pull up those Ken Pom numbers as well. Nova's 8. We're 17 actually in the country, with Xavier and Seton Hall trailing behind closely at 18, 20, and Providence at 31. So, I mean, really a big disparity there. It's interesting to see the coaches go with Seton Hall, of course, and for obvious reasons. They have a lot of consistency really in returning starters. They returned 4 of 5 starters from last year. Obviously, the Miles Powell effect. I'm not sure still why everyone's so hot on him over Markus Howard in terms of, the Big East.
It's a John Fanta propaganda machine.
It could be. It could very well be Fanta. MU. I mean, Powell, a lot of people, I think, just has that it factor and that clutch gene, which is slightly hard to argue against, although he's obviously incredibly frustrating to watch as Marquette fans, and I'm sure players alike. But I get it, I guess. And then Nova is Nova. They lose Phil Booth, they lose Eric Pascal, but they're returning Colin Bolesky, Siddiq Bey, and Jermaine Samuels, and they add, I think, one of the best recruiting classes in the country, which is led by a dude named Jeremiah Robinson Earl. And beyond that, you have the Jay Wright factor there. Like Jay Wright continues to reload. He continues to use an influx of new talent to fill the void left by guys like Booth and Pascal and Josh Hart, and name your departing Villanova star. Like, he's done it before. I can see why he'll do it again. And then Xavier has some combination of sort of that consistency that Seton Hall's bringing back and some influx of new talent. So Xavier has sort of a little bit of the best of those both worlds. They return another 4 of their 5 starters, which should sound familiar. And all 4 of those guys average double-digit scoring. And then they have, again, a huge touted freshman class coming in, highlighted by a dude named Kai Tandy, which I don't know about you dudes, but that's that immediately wins early season cool name honors in my book.
The Tandy Man.
The Tandy Man can.
So you know, one of my favorite subplots from last season for Marquette basketball, maybe it even wasn't a subplot. The emergence of Seton Hall as a potential blood rival, or as a potential legit rival for us in the Big East. I am all here for that. We're not rivals with Villanova, obviously, and I don't really care enough about any of the other teams, but something about Miles Powell, something about that team, just I love it. I want to play them. I love the attitude that games brings out in the two teams. It's feisty. Frankly, it's everything I've been wanting in a Big East rival for Marquette. That is more than just the boring ass ho hum of Providence, DePaul, Butler. Like, let's get a little attitude in there. And if Seton Hall brings it to us, I'm here for it.
I want to see Ed Morrow punch Kevin Willard in the face.
Yeah. And then John Fanta in the face.
The rivalry's on.
I think I mentioned this last year on the pod, but my father-in-law and brother-in-law are both very proud and vocal Seton Hall graduates. So this springs an extra little something special to me.
Yeah. There you go.
Tell them Pirates are not honorable people.
I think lost in all this conversation, though, guys, is that the Big East is a meat grinder this year. Like, it is very, very good. It's not just super top heavy with Nova at the top and everyone else sort of falling behind. I think KenPom rates this as the second best conference in the country, and it's going to show. This is going to be a really fun year for conference play, and it's going to be tough as hell.
Well, I think, first of all, just to answer Mike's initial question, is I appreciate that there's some maybe somewhat decent clipboard material, or whatever you call it. What's the board? Bulletin board material putting us fourth. I think that would motivate the guys a little bit, and not being ranked, stuff like that. Certainly there could be some overreaction to the Hauser thing, but I appreciate us being ranked a little lower because it gives us something more to prove. But I think
when you're talking about bulletin board, let's also tack up there Big East preseason player of the year, Miles Powell.
Yep.
Not
Sure.
Mr. Howard. Add that up there too.
Yeah, exactly. But to rephrase what Eric said about the league being a meat grinder, I also, we ran down the top teams. No one in this league is, bar none, the top team. And so what that means to me is opportunity more than anything else.
Right.
The Big East is open to be won. This isn't a Nova running the table, 31-2 kind of season from them. They're not that at that level, I don't think, this year, but they're still obviously the team to beat, I think, on top. But with that said, it's wide open in my opinion, and I think that Marquette should take the view that it's theirs for the taking.
All right, so let's transition here to final season thoughts. And to do so, I want to tell a quick story from Eric Pond, from our mutual past with Eric Pond. Eric, you probably remember this. So this might have been like 2011, 2012, 2010. We went to a bar. So Eric and I lived in DC together in a group house. Eric crashed on an air mattress on our right?
Yeah, for the first week it was an air mattress. Then it was just a slowly leaking sack of air for the remainder of that month and a half. But yep, keep going.
Yeah, a lot of good memories of that month. But this particular time, Marquette was in the tournament. I really can't remember what year it was. It might have been. It was one of those Jimmy Butler, DJO years, and we went to a bar in downtown DC. We had like a 3 p.m., 4 p.m. tip-off. The only reason I remember this is because I drove by this bar the other day. But we watched the whole game there. We got there early, right? It was like empty earlier on because it's like 3 p.m. on a Thursday, so who the hell's there? And we just drank for the whole game. And by the end of the game, I just remember being shit-faced. And by that time, the bar was packed. Everybody was at their table there for the night round of games. And Marquette, I think we either went to overtime. I'll have to look back. We either went to overtime or like it came right down to the wire. Do you remember this?
I think this was against Steph Curry and Davidson, wasn't it?
The Vander and Jamil Wilson shot?
Yeah, I think it was. Wasn't it? I mean, we were going wild. We definitely imbibed heavily, but I mean, it was a wild game. I do remember that now. Yep.
So my favorite memory, aside from the fact that Marquette won that game and was amazing, I like literally think about this maybe once a month and just laugh and am embarrassed. Do you remember at the end of that game, Marquette won, and we were sitting at the bar on those bar stools next to each other. We turned to each other and we tried to high five, and we just pulled a fucking Dumb and Dumber, and we were standing up and totally whipped each other's hands. And I'm pretty sure the whole bar was watching. That was one of the most embarrassing moments, but I could not stop laughing when we drove by.
I think we were the afternoon entertainment for most of the other patrons in the bar, just sitting and laughing at us in a wild Marquette fever. It was crazy. I do remember that. I vividly remember that.
So the point is, season expectations. Do we think Marquette is going to whiff as bad as Eric and I whiffed on that drunken high five? Or do we think Marquette, this is finally the year in which Marquette's going to land a punch? Are we going to get a tournament win, more than one tournament win in Markus Howard, his final season at Marquette? Are we going to get Wojo's first tournament win this year? I'm not asking for predictions, but let's close out here with some big picture season thoughts and where you guys see this going. Pete Mohan, I want to start with you.
Well, guys, I have to say I'm all in on the Kool-Aid this year.
Yes.
I mean, you guys can talk me down, but this is the best team that Wojo has ever had, and I think a lot of times, maybe fairly or unfairly, we look at historical performance. Like we mentioned, though, not every team is the same iteration of itself. Things change, so the history of this team in the tournament is not predictive of this year's squad. And I think that this team, like I said, is as well-rounded as you'll see. We have a little bit of everything. And most importantly, we have a preseason All-American guard at the helm, which ask any, NCAA pundit or junkie or whatever, and they'll tell you that having a guard like that come March is one of the most important elements to having a winning squad. So between the improvements that I think we'll see on defense and the improvements that we'll have in ball handling and having a more dynamic, fast-paced offense, I think this team is going to be a lot of fun to watch, and I really expect us to make it to the second weekend of the tournament, and I would be shocked if we don't.
Eric?
I think I want to point to one date on the calendar right now to sort of start my point in my response to your question, Mike. It's February 29th. It's senior day. It's Seton Hall at home. And by that point in time, Markus Howard should be Marquette's all-time leading scorer. Not only that, he likely will also have set the Big East scoring record and own that title. He only needs 678 points to pass Troy Bell. He will be playing at that point, hopefully, for a seed in the NCAA tournament. And then from there, I think there will be an effect and a real build around this program to do this for Markus, to win a tournament game. It's not just all on Markus. He's not a one-man show, although he can be. And I want to take a step back just to remind everyone to savor this year with Markus, and no matter what happens, realize that we've witnessed an all-time great, if not the best in history, performance by a player at Marquette University. Likely will go down as the best in history.
And if Wojo even ends up coaching for 20 years at Marquette, Markus might be the best player in his entire tenure.
Exactly.
Awesome.
I mean, we could be telling our kids, and we will be telling our kids about the time, that 4-year span we got to really enjoy watching Markus Howard in a Golden Eagles uniform. So by the time we roll out to the tournament and hopefully round out, the roster with some of these other question marks being answered, we're doing this for Markus, and we're doing this to build on a legacy. And we're also doing it, again, as you said, to just take the next step forward as a program and really set ourselves up for the future by regaining success in the NCAA tournament with a win. Hopefully that win, that momentum takes us to the second weekend. And that's where right now I hope the ceiling is, if not a little higher, but that's where I'm at right now. And that's sort of where my head's at.
So I will underscore several times, bold, italicize the Markus Howard point, for as much as we get caught up in the day-to-day minutia and the hemming and hawing, and it is special, and we do need to enjoy it because we've all been on this earth for over 30 years, and you can count on one hand the number of players like Markus Howard that you've seen and had a chance to enjoy. So for sure, where my head goes when I think about this season, and Pete Mohan, your point about the most talented roster ever brought this to my mind. I remember saying in the preseason pod last year that last year's team was perhaps the most talented roster at Marquette since at least I'd been watching actively and participating. And I think that's true. I think this year's roster is more talented, but last year's was, up until that point, the most talented that I had seen. But what sticks out to me is what undid the roster last year, at least from my perspective, was internal chemistry issues. And what I want to see is the management of this team. How do they come together themselves, the players, from a chemistry standpoint? How does Wojo and the coaching staff learn from what happened last year? I'm not suggesting that anything like last year is going to happen again, but it underscores the point. that success at the college basketball level isn't just about talent. That's a huge point, but it's about much more than that. And so let's see how this team comes together. It seems like they really like each other. Wojo sent that message that they're the team that's always all hanging out together in one group. That's a great thing if it's true. I hope it's true, and I hope we see that on the court. So with that, I guess we got one more quick thing. Any junk drawer items, Eric, from you? We didn't prep you for it, but you might have come prepared anyway.
Oh man. The junk drawer is kind of one of those things that, it's a little creaky at the beginning of the year. There's some hiccups with it. Guys, don't worry. We'll really round this out. By the time we hit conference play, you will be hopefully rolling on the floor every time the junk drawer comes around. But just one thing, pre-pod, we were chatting. I think we all know this, but Buzz Williams is on to another great adventure here with a new team in Texas at Texas A&M. Buzz obviously did great things at Virginia Tech and brought them really historic success for what they had, but really interesting to take a look at what he's done, basically taking every recruit from Va Tech that was coming in this year, bringing them with him along to Texas A&M, and then getting one of the top JUCO recruits or transfers in the country to join his team as well. So, I mean, damn it, if he's not buzzing again. So that's
every time I see Buzz, I think the same thing I think when I see those NFL refs who are just like jacked way too much for their profession. It's like, dude, stay healthy. It's great, but like, really, that's what you're putting your time into to look like that? It's all love Buzz, but he's a funny looking guy.
Or as Buzz would say, like world emoji, heart emoji, heart emoji, and then like a person that
Great
if you don't
Twitter
follow Buzz on Twitter.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it is someone I never unfollowed, but emoji heavy dude.
Anything else in the junk drawer? Or is that it for this time?
That's what I got. Mohan, what do you got?
I think something we were talking, about Marcus's records and stuff like that. I think one number that I'm interested to watch, not historically, but maybe a record threatener, is Theo for most blocks in a season. Jim McIlvaine holds the throne with 142 blocks in 1994. So, we're talking 30-some games. That would be a pretty hefty task. That divided 142 divided by 30-ish, you're in the 4.5 blocks a game category. How many I'll just throw this out there to you guys. What do you think Theo is going to average in blocks per game, and does he have any chance of catching up with Mac?
Ooh, catching up with Mac is a tall order.
Yeah.
I would actually have to look at the numbers. Did Theo outpace Morrow last year in blocks? I guess he probably did, but I feel like Morrow had his fair share too.
Yes. Believe Theo was, at least in block rate, Theo was 17th of the country in block rate at 11.1%, and Morrow was at 4.5. So Theo is certainly an elite shot blocker.
I shouldn't even analyze this. You should go with your heart on things like this. I think everything of Theo. Let's take it. Let's
5 blocks a game, Theo.
5 blocks a game. Yeah. He'll pat us.
Dude, this team would be so good if Theo is blocking 5 shots a game. Are you kidding
me? He was 34th in the nation at 2.1 blocks per game last year. First in the Big East, 34th in the nation. Blocked at least 1 shot in 26 games, 70 blocked, 7th best single season total.
Jeez.
Let's go, Theo.
Let's
go.
One more lazy ass junk drawer item that I should have led with, but R.I.P. McCormick Hall, everyone.
Oh yeah,
it looks like it's rubble.
I never lived in McCormick. Had some good times. Had some good romps in McCormick, but is it just me, or is the love for a long, the now gone McCormick Hall just a bit much? It's like, all right, let's just fucking chill. It was just a dorm.
It's the legend will be greater than the facility itself, right? Yeah. I feel like in the annals of Marquette history.
Yeah.
Did anyone cultivated many greats? I'm sure.
Sure.
Did anyone get the commemorative koozie? I think Pete Worth did. Brother Worth, who is not with us
I
tonight.
didn't act fast enough. I was shut out. But I'm waiting for the O'Donnell Hall koozie.
Oh, yeah.
I'm be about that life.
Nice.
I don't even know what that would be shaped like, but all right.
An H, I suppose.
Jeez, let's not bring that up. All right. That's a story for another time. All right. So, folks, thank you for listening again to your friends here on the Real Chili Podcast. We're excited, as you can tell, for this upcoming season. Fear not. All of us are here and back in for the fold for the new season, including not only the three of us on this pod, but Pete Worth and Brian Henry. So they will be back on, coming soon. We are going to make a few changes to the pod this year. You may notice that we post a little less frequently, depending on how things go. You may also notice us trying to maybe give you a little bit more about who we are and where we come from and how we all know each other, a little bit more of that background, of course, built in with the basketball analysis and reaction that you've come to know and love. So thanks as always for listening. Signing off for Pete Mohan, signing off for Eric Pond, and for everyone else here at the Real Chili Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lavender. Looking forward to a great 2019-2020 season, and we'll talk to you next time here on the Real Chili Podcast.
Shout out to Jamal Cain, Pontiac's native son, for winning the dunk competition this year.
Hey!
My man.